Apologies from our committee members.
Chair.
Sorry?
No apologies, Chair.
No apologies, right? And then can we have the PIC they here? So can we please ask you to introduce yourselves and to get going? We normally allocate about 45 minutes to stakeholders. You can take up to an hour if you like. And then we engage with you and then you come back to us on the questions we're preoccupied with. May I suggest, I've been through your submission, that the first few slides, they're far too detailed in respect of who you are, what you do, what your role is. Even new members have been with you now several. Interested in presumably is your financials overall, your investment strategy, how you're contributing towards transformation, what are some of the strengths and weaknesses of your approach as you see it. I know you set your challenges out in your last slide, but I think really the first part you can go through fairly quickly, a more reminder to members, especially new members, what it is you do. Okay, over then to you.
Thanks, Chair.
Will you kindly put your video on when you speak? That's required by Parliament. Yeah. Okay.
Oh, yes.
Over to you then.
Thanks, Chairperson of the Finance.
We have the obviously the Deputy Minister Masondo. Welcome.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks.
We can't hear you very well. Is it just me, colleagues? Is it just me?
Can you hear me?
Because I'm having problems on my side. Generally, but maybe it's just me. But if others can hear, so be it. Others, can you hear the
There's
Deputy
an
Minister?
echo, sir. There's an echo, Chair.
There's an echo, they say, dear.
I think you need to switch off. Okay. Am I better now? Can you hear me?
Yeah, marginally. I think the mic is too far away from you. It's not carrying for some reason.
Very faint, very faint.
Sorry? What's that, Dennis?
It's good
No,
now,
the sound is very faint, Chairperson.
Yeah, the sound is very faint, so he says.
Or should I go and sit there?
Can you all hear me?
Yes, very well.
We hear you
Oh,
clearly.
right, good. Okay, so it's on your side, DM.
Okay, let me just move. So you have to.
Quite.
To change the. Yeah. See you. Oh, you're representing from that side. So
Yeah,
no, it's fine. No, it makes sense. Yeah. Chair, can you hear us?
Yes, yes,
fine. We'll have to do for National Treasury being who you are and your wonderful ICT, as I remember it years ago. It's a bit disappointing, but so be it. Let's get going. As long as we can hear you.
Can you're a little bit faint. We can hear you, but
we can hear you, DM.
All right, Nicolette says she can hear you. Are we fine? Let's get going. Yeah, okay, fine. It's not the greatest of sound systems, but we'll do.
Can you increase the volume? Our volume. Yeah, okay. Okay, so Chair, I'll follow instruction, which is that we need to introduce ourselves before we start. My name is David Masondo, the Deputy Minister of Finance.
Oh, really?
Just for the public, Chair. For the public, Chair, not for you. For the public, also the chairperson of the PIC. I'm going to ask the acting CEO, Ms. Makano Musidi, to introduce herself and the team that is here. She's acting CEO, Chair, because Mr. Sitole is on leave until the 20th of June. So she's here acting on behalf in that position as the CEO. Ms. Musidi, over to you.
Thank you, Chair, and good morning, members of SICOF. My name is Makano Musidi, like the chairperson has explained, and I'm with the whole of the PIC Expo, which is quite a small team. With me, we have Brian Mavuka, and I will ask him to introduce himself. My role in the PIC is officially a CTO, Chief Technology Officer, and I'm currently just the acting CEO with Mr. Stolle on sick leave. I will ask Brian to also introduce himself and so on.
Good morning, members. My name is Brian Mavuka. I am the acting Chief Financial Officer. Thank you.
We also have our CRO.
Good morning, members. My name is August van Herten. I'm the Chief Risk Officer at the PIC. Also, at the moment, acting Chief Operating Officer. Thank you.
So members, I'll also apologize for our Chief Investment Officer who will join us in an hour. There is an urgent matter that he's seeing to with one of our investment partners and clients. So they will come through after that, but everything is covered and that will complete our expo. And in-house here, we have Verna Lowe, who's our company secretariat, and we also have Shahif, who's actually with the chairperson of the board. Thank you, Chair.
So, Chair, can we proceed?
DM, you will manage your team there about who says what, when, and so on. The time you can manage it instead of me interrupting each time. Thank you.
Yeah, no, that's fine. Thanks, Chair, and members of the Select Committee, members of the public, media present. Thanks for the opportunity to present the PIC performance as at 31st December 2021. Chair, as this board, we are almost 7 months old, and building on the work of the previous board, we have identified a number of immediate tasks, and this includes the implementation of the party report recommendations, resolving the previous bad investments, filling in of C-suite at the senior executive management positions just to stabilize the institution at that level. And we've also said that we do need to finalize the mandates from our clients at GPF, UIF, and the compensation fund. And the PLC has made considerable progress with regard to the implementation of the party's findings and recommendations, which were largely aimed at correcting deficiencies in policies, governance, oversight, and investment processes, but also to rebuild the reputation of the PAC and its relationship with clients, stakeholders, as well as regulators. You'll recall, Chair and honorable members, that the Commission made 377 findings and recommendations, and these findings can be divided into three. The first set of recommendations required the PIC to take action, and these actions and recommendations were 331. And some of these actions, they require the criminal justice system to follow up on those findings. And the second set of the findings and recommendations required the shareholder, that is the Department of Finance, and these were 31 in total, and 15 were actions required to be taken by our biggest client, which is the Government Employees Pension Fund. And with regard to the recommendations that we were required to implement and execute as the PIC, like I said, 377 recommendations, 77% of these recommendations were implemented. And this has been confirmed by the advisory panel led by the retired Constitutional Court Justice, Yvonne Mukhoro, appointed by the previous board, and where, Chair, the commission, that is in party commission, directed that the PIC should conduct further forensic investigations into problematic transactions or the conduct of the PIC officials. I can confirm, Chair, that independent forensic investigators have been appointed and they are in the process of conducting these investigations. It is also in this context that the PIC had to discipline and suspend some of the PIC executive management members. A number of transactions and individuals with the evidence from the forensic investigations have been referred to the Director of Priority Crime Investigation, popularly known as the Hawks, for criminal investigations. And Chair, there are currently a number of matters before courts and litigation. These matters, as I said, they arise from the previous bad investment decisions by ourselves as the PIC, and it is very difficult to predict a date for completion of each case. However, our approach, Chair, is that where possible, we seek to settle these matters out of court, but in other instances, we have to find this in courts in order to recover the lost funds and value in the interest of the workers' savings. And in respect of Steenhoff, which is another transaction highlighted by the party, the PIC has accepted the Steenhoff global settlement offer, and it is in the process of concluding a settlement agreement on behalf of our clients, that is the GPF. Chair, there's a growing stability at the top executive management level, and in line with the Party's Commission's recommendation, the position of the Chief Investment Officer was reintroduced in the organogram to ensure appropriate checks and balances between the functions of the CEO and the CIO. And investment processes are now overseen by the CIO, that is the Chief Investment Officer, whilst operations are overseen by the Chief Operating Officer. And the overall management responsibility resides with the CEO. And at the C-suite or the senior management level, we have successfully appointed the CEO, the Chief Risk Officer, Chief Technology Officer, and the Chief Operating Officer. And more recently, the CIO, and then which basically mean that this position now constitutes the PIC Executive Committee. And the recruitment for the Chief Financial Officer is currently underway. We've actually shortlisted. What is left is for us to conduct the interviews. Chair, as we know that the PIC has 2.5 trillion assets under its management, and these assets belong to workers, mainly public service workers. And as the PIC, we're expected to deploy the workers' money in both listed and unlisted assets, asset classes, such as fixed income, equity, real estate, in order to generate returns for workers when they retire. In doing so, we as a PIC, we contribute towards transforming and growing our economy to deal with high levels of unemployment and poverty, whilst generating better returns for our clients. Together with our clients, Chair, we will continue to seek an increase in the allocation for the unlisted portfolio. Internationally, the allocation to unlisted investment is moving towards 25%, and therefore, Chair, this is no longer an insignificant asset class if you look at the global trend. It doesn't mean that we will turn a blind eye on the listed side. And of course, we will make sure that we proactively engage these listed entities to partner with the PIC to grow our economy. Chair, earlier this year, the PIC and the GPF signed a new unlisted investment mandate that provides the framework for new unlisted investment targeting transformation, economic growth, job creation, environmental and good social returns. The investment mandate with the UIF is also being reviewed, and the process to conclude a revised mandate is at an advanced stage. A similar review is being conducted with the compensation fund. Just to conclude my opening remarks, Chair, the PIC's future success, particularly over the next 3 years, will be marked by the intentional growth in unlisted investments in line with the client's mandate. And this will require building a capable team of professionals working in a befitting culture, underpinned by a brand that can be trusted, led by the board that instill credibility, ethics, and integrity to successfully traverse new territories. Chair, let me ask the acting CEO, Ms. Makano Musidi, to take us through the performance report as at December 2021. Over to you, acting CEO.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to the members of CECOF. And Chair, I will take your cue. I think you are worried about the elaborate introductory slides, but because it's the first time we come to this committee, we thought it befitting to just give it a little history, and I won't waste time on it, just so that we can put everything in context for the members of the CECOF. So just in terms of what we will cover, it's everything that you see on the index slide. And I'll just do the first one quickly, so that we can then position the rest of the discussions appropriately for the committee. The objective today and the purpose, Chair, we are not going to move away from it. It is about explaining the key performance objective, targets and results to this committee, which is for the period ended 31st December 2021, as per request by the invitation that we got from the invitation to this particular meeting. And before I do that, Chair, I would like to just quickly then go into the history of PIC, and like I said, Chair, I promise not to spend a lot of time there, but just to give the necessary context for the committee. So just like any other organization, PIC has gone through a number of phases and changes befitting the requirements of the time in terms of what is required of it. And of late, we are using the PIC Act of 2004, that is what is governing us as amended by the Public Investment Corporation in 2019. And what it really entails, some of it is what the chairman spoke to, but that is how the board composition is looking like, with 10 non-executive directors. And just to strengthen that governance requirement, that whole board is now fully instituted, and the members have been appointed and we're in full operation. There are 3 executive directors as per the new amendment, and one of them is the CEO, and currently the 2 executive directors is in the acting CFO, Brian, and in myself as the Chief Technology Officer. So we're making up the 3 of those executive directors that you see. And then the chairperson, as you have seen him now introducing himself and actually taking us through the opening statements and the directive. So what we get, we report to the Department of Finance, as you would know. And of course, there are things and aspects that we table with the minister, and that the minister also tables with us in terms of their requirements. The key thing that drives our operations is really coming from the clients, what we call the client mandates, and they give us the guardrails in terms of where we can operate, the limits that we can actually go into in terms of the different sectors. And you'll see that our strategy is really aligned to what the mandates are saying. And then, of course, we annually report to the minister. And the implementation of this act, whilst it was actually going to be progressive, we're at a point where I think we have fully implemented it in terms of its prescript. And just quickly, Chair, without going through the slide, this is just the ecosystem that PIC is operating in. So our biggest driver is to make sure that we deliver maximum returns when it comes to the mandates and investments that we make. But at the same time, equally important almost is just the transformational objectives that we have in terms of the economy, in terms of making sure that we create jobs, and we make sure that those socio-economic development requirements we actually are promoting and making sure that we achieve. I think PIC, Chair, is in a good position to make sure that we accelerate on those objectives as much as we can by the investments that we make. The other component, Chair, is just in terms of the clients. So we do get those mandates, like I mentioned earlier, and we make sure that we implement, like the new mandate that we've just signed. The investment strategy will be speaking to that for quite an extent in terms of how we're going to implement that and what we did. And Chair, just quickly, our mission, which is pretty much what is common in terms of corporates of this nature, because PIC, whilst it is in the public space, it is also very comparable to those corporates which are in the private sector. So we're trying as much as possible to align and to actually be responsive and be like those corporates. Key on this slide for me is just to mention that whilst you will see later on when I just show you through the governance structures, we do have an ethics committee. You won't see it on this mission. It is under revision as we try to reinvent ourselves to also focus on ethics and also focus on the new upcoming data and analytics capabilities that such shops like PIC go with all the time to be able to be responsive, to be able to be competitive in the market. Now, just quickly, Chair, just in terms of the clients, that is our clients we just tried to just list the top 5, because if you look at the last point there, you have various smaller clients that I didn't actually mention in name. But the biggest of them all is the GEPF, and of course, followed by the UIF, where the chairperson was saying we're still finalizing the mandate together with the compensation fund. That is actually in a very advanced stage. And we will be concluding that in the next one or 2 months, and we'll be ready to actually go. When it comes to the GEPF1, Chair, we have actually started with the implementation of that, although it still has to go through the regulatory framework, which is like the phase where they must actually approve it, South African Reserve Bank, where they should actually be comfortable that we're focusing on the right things and we're not putting the country at risk. And Chair, just in terms of our asset class composition, I just thought it is important just to make this very clear. So we do have 2 focus areas, the listed side, which currently is about 95% of our portfolio. And then you have the unlisted side, which is only 5%. You will recall that the chairperson said, we are focusing on lifting the unlisted side because globally, that is where that leg, that asset portfolio is the one which will actually ensure that we create jobs, we transform the economy. But with our little 5%, the biggest focus then in the next 5 years is going to look at whether we can move that 5% to the visionary 25%. Of course, we'll take it in stages. So when you look at where we are currently, the first part is the listed investment, where it is about 95 if you look at all the listed sides of things. And that particular portfolio is almost always outperforming the benchmark, which is where I think we are anchoring ourselves as an organization. Now, the many challenges that we have, and because we still have to mature the unlisted side for quite a bit, it's where I think we're having challenges, but it's only 5% of our portfolio. No wonder we can actually stand strong, even if we are hit by things like COVID, and we're still able to make sure that our clients can meet their obligations when such unplanned catastrophes hit us. So, Chair, that is how we look in terms of the split of our portfolio. Now, quickly, Chair, this is how our corporate governance looks like in line with our new amended act, and we have about 8 subcommittees of the board, and all of them are in full steam operational. And you will see that we have the shareholder there represented by the minister, just like, just like in most of the public-owned entities. And we have all those subcommittees operating and feeding into the main board. And like I said, they are now all in full steam, and Chair, they are actually beginning to make the big changes that are required in terms of how we should operate and the impact that we should actually have. Now, followed on by that is the executive committee, which is also having its own subcommittees. And like the chairman said, and I don't want to repeat that, it is almost fully populated in terms of the EXCO itself, but also those subcommittees are also in full steam already. And Chair, I will stop here just in terms of that to shorten it. And I will ask the acting CFO in the absence of the CIO, who will join us later, just to start taking us through the investments philosophy of the PIC. Brian, can I ask you then to take the committee through just our thinking and our philosophy and where we're headed for? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair. The PIC investment philosophy is underpinned by the following principles. Firstly, the investments that we enter into must give a financial return. So when we look at it in 2 phases. So on the listed side, we have contracted benchmarks with the clients. So all the investments we enter into must exceed the benchmark. On the unlisted side, we then have contracted rates up front, where we use models to credit risk the investment, where we get a rate that we need to exceed. And that's very important as a first tick to make. All the investments that we enter into also must be sustainable. So we look at it from having an impact in the environment, from a social perspective and a governance perspective, and that's the ESG term. Because if an investment has those 3 principles embodied in it, it will then give long financial returns, both to the community as well as to our clients. And the other important factor that we always look at when we make investments, that we are a long-term investor. So we never take short-term decisions. It's always saying what impact is this investment going to give us in the future. And there'll be instances where in the shorter term, the investment is not performing per business case, but we then put measures by the professionals then ensure that the investment turns around and starts performing. So I think that this is also a very important slide. So the orange line that goes up and down illustrates the GDP growth, and the bar charts is the assets under management that the PIC manages. So what the graph then shows is that there's a direct relationship between the growth in GDP as well as the growth in AUM, where we saw for instance, in 2020, where there was a decline in GDP, there was also a decline in AUM. And the following year in 2021, where there's been an increase in GDP, there was also a corresponding increase in the assets that we manage. Then this slide then also shows how the PIC stacks up from a financial perspective, the PIC corporate from a financial perspective, as well as the social impact. So on the financial side, the entity is profitable. Over the years, we've managed to grow the balance sheet by quite a substantial amount, and we're sitting at approximately 3 billion now. From the audit side, we have received unqualified audit opinions from the Auditor General, and that has then assisted us to be financially sustainable. On the social side, when we look at our workforce, it comprises of 49.9% of women, with 36% in senior positions within the entity. We have 1.6 individuals with disabilities, and Africans, Coloureds, and Indians make up approximately 94% of our workforce. workforce. The PIC also has a graduate program where we've employed 21 graduates across the business and mostly concentrated in the investment space. And that's also our part, the part that we're playing to build our capacity and give our youth the opportunity to grow the investment skills and make them marketable within the industry. We spend quite a bit of our funds developing staff as well as running a graduate program where the program itself is made up of 64% women and 36% men, and they are then given funds to study in tertiary institutions. Chair, I'll then get to the performance results of the PIC for the quarter ended 31st December 2021. The main KPIs that we look at are broken down into four. There's financial efficiency, internal business controls, client and stakeholders, as well as human capital management. The weightings are mostly towards clients and stakeholders because that's where the reason why PIC exists, as well as where the clients look at to ascertain if we're performing well or not. On the first KPI, which is financial sustainability, there's two measures there. The first one is total staff cost over management fees, as well as total costs over management fees. Both those measures haven't been achieved, and the reason why they weren't achieved is due to the expiry of the previous mandate that we signed with the clients. So they expired in the previous financial year. So for the financial year beginning 1st April 2021 to the end 31st December, we weren't earning fees, but that has then been corrected by what the chair as well as the acting CEO mentioned, that we have then signed a new mandate starting 1st April 2022, where we have then started earning those fees. And what we've seen is we now are achieving that because the base has then gone back to what it previously was before. The second part is then where we look at our internal business processes and we look at measures of whether we've had any regular expenditure. We've done all our submissions per PFMA, what our audit outcome is, and based on the cases that get reported to our various, be it through the ethics office or through our TIPOPS line, has there been any matters of ethical behavior that have been reported, and have we followed up on those? And in those measures, we've then achieved them. The aspect of the audit, we currently going through an audit, and we submitted all the information through to the Auditor General, and they are busy looking at the submission. The other part that we also look at is from a risk perspective in terms of how is the risk environment improving year on year. And with that aspect, we also were able to achieve it where from a risk index or risk measure that we look at, we're then able to improve and achieve that measure as compared to a similar reporting period in the previous year. We then get to the meat of how the PIC performs. So the CEO earlier mentioned the different asset classes, and on the listed side, where we have around 95% of the 2.3 trillion, we there were able to exceed the benchmark, and we exceeded by quite a big margin, which compares to our peers in the private sector. On the two measures that we weren't able to achieve was on the Isibaya Fund, as well as on the properties, where we were below the benchmark, and that portfolio has mostly been impacted by COVID, where those businesses are still struggling and haven't turned around as yet, as well as the impairments that we are seeing in those sectors, which measures are being put in to then assist those businesses to recover and turning leaf. On driving transformation, we look at it in four aspects. One is on the listed side, in giving black brokers or companies with higher BEE levels than preference in when we do our activities in that space, as well as in external managers, where we then give our preference to transformed entities. And in those aspects, we have then been able to achieve. On the approved transactions, we were then affected then by the delays in finalizing the mandate, but that's something that the team has currently been working on, in ensuring that for the same reporting period, that particular issue does not repeat itself. The last part that we then look at is the human capital management, where there's two measures that were not achieved, and that's in looking, we have a measure of the total staff having staff that is disabled. We didn't meet that measure as of December, but for the end of the financial year, we have met it, and that's the one that the AG is currently looking at, and will then be presented in our integrated report. The other one that we didn't meet is the one that relates to a training for staff, where there is a percentage that we aim towards, and that one will still remain unmet for the end of the financial year.
Thank you, Brian. Chair, we would now like to go into the challenges as per request, and I know that this area was supposed to be taken on by the CIO, who will be joining us soon. But in the meantime, Chair, I think I'm projecting a slide which is more on the global, on the macroeconomic challenges that we have. As we know, Chair, the whole escalation of Russia and Ukraine conflict, it hasn't left us unscathed as a country. So it has led to high costs of electricity and energy overall. And Chair, some of the things that perhaps are quite common to us are, for example, the COVID-19, which is more leading to the infrastructure constraints that we have had. And you would have seen from what the CFO was presenting that has also impacted the unlisted side when it comes to properties, which I think it was quite an obvious impact. And when you look at the global recession of just that is just actually globally happening, we are also impacted by those in terms of the policy and reform implementation, which then becomes a little bit uncertain. Inflation of food, which we are experiencing in our backyard as well. It is a global challenge, but I think it also comes back to actually impacting us. And you'll recall, Chair, that there is a slide that the CFO showed us where asset under management are directly related to how the economy is performing. So if there is a dip in terms of the GDP performance, then it actually leads to a dip in terms of how PIC itself will actually perform. And so that whole challenge, which might actually appear to be global, it actually leads us to being impacted as well, because it does affect our economy overall. And Chair, I'll just then continue to bring it back home in terms of what then are we looking at in terms of that unlisted environment, because our focus, Chair, is going to be on the unlisted side, which is going to drive most of our activities so that we actually achieve the two objectives of maximizing returns and ensuring that we can achieve the transformational goals and aspirations of our country. So, Chair, the first one there is in terms of the mandate design, which we have now completed. It is usually a very rigorous process, which is iterative in nature, just in terms of how we engage with the clients. So they give us the mandate, we look at it, what is possible, we start looking at the management fees, which you'll recall that one of the objectives that we haven't achieved is because we were impacted in terms of our management fees. So that is Chair, the first challenge, which I think we have now gone over it. I think what is left is just to make sure that regulatory, we are actually following the regulations, and the regulatory bodies are actually giving us a tick in terms of those mandates and how they are structured. They are focused in terms of the sectors and the limits that you have to actually comply with. And then the second one, Chair, it was more in terms of the implementation of that mandate, which I think for now we can say it is complete as well. Chair, the CIO has just joined us, and Kabelo Rikoto. The chairman explained that recently we have secured Kabelo as the Chief Investment Officer of the PIC. I don't think Kabelo got his pay slip as yet. I think he hasn't been paid for the first time. So he's hardly 2 or 3 weeks here, but he has hit the ground running. And Chair, I would like to introduce him to the committee, and I'd like to hand over this section, which I was just filling in the gap because it's really his part of work. I think he'll voice over effectively more than me. Kabelo, this is the SECOF Committee of Parliament, and we are now almost in the middle of it. We have reached the challenges in terms of the diagram that we did yesterday. So I covered this, and you can also just voice over in terms of what do I have. Okay, you can drive on the back, sorry. Okay.
Welcome to the committee. I know sometimes entities think that parliamentary committees are dreadful. So if you've heard that, it's not true. We're even worse than dreadful. Okay.
Yes. Good morning, Chair, and the delegates of Parliament. Thanks for the opportunity. I know that my colleagues, and thank you, and Dr. Masondo as well, for your presence. Just in terms of challenges, which I think the acting CEO had covered relating to really just the market environment. I think just as a high level, we know that food, fuel, cost push inflation has been driving quite a lot of pain across the globe. I think you saw in the US that inflation print came out at about 8.9%. I don't remember the last time the US inflation was so much higher than South African inflation. And remember, the bond rates in the US are 3%. So those pensioners, they are really, really out of the money in terms of real returns. They're getting negative real returns. So everyone is getting poorer in the US now. When you bring it home, obviously, we are not an island. Everything that happens globally impacts us. So you will see even within our country, the Reserve Bank has said that they're going to raise rates because they are worried about second-round effects. The petrol at the pump is now closer to 26 Rand a liter. Someone was saying that buying a Savannah is now a bit cheaper than petrol. So it's a bit of it's something that obviously inflation impacts, remember, the poor a lot more than people who are slightly wealthier. So for me, the key top of mind is it's inflation within our economy. The second one, I would say unemployment, but unemployment relates to what we are doing on growth. I know the government is doing quite a few initiatives on reforms, but unemployment should be keeping a lot of us, we should not be sleeping at night so that we can arrest, especially the youth unemployment at about 65%. So those two key issues, we are getting into a situation where you have low growth going forward, potentially, and high inflation, which obviously will lead to stagflation. And that's it's an economic environment that normally leads to upheavals and social unrests within the economy. But I think within South Africa, we are lucky that obviously resources are helping us. With elevated resources prices, we are getting quite a good income from on the fiscal side. Resources companies are paying tax, it's helping treasury, and it's also helping cushion the blow a bit. So that's the high level stuff in terms of the key issues. I'm not going to talk about the rand, but you know, all these things will impact negatively on the rand, unless if we raise interest rates high. But we shouldn't be surprised if the rand weakens on an ongoing basis, given that the US will have to just continue raising their interest rates. So it makes our interest rates less attractive and it puts pressure on the rand a bit. So I think that's the high level on the macro side. On the portfolio side, because the question we got was, provide us with an update as to the challenges in implementing the mandate. So the slide in front of you covers the issues on the unlisted side. On the listed side, I mean, we don't really have very, very strong issues. I think everything that side, it's highly regulated. We largely, the investments are 75 to 80% passively managed in a very strict, controlled and regulated market. The only issue that we just need to discuss, that we need to sort out on the listed side, is really just on the credit side. So, you know, as the PIC, we are a huge bond investor. So, and largely we've been investing in government bonds, and the team has expressed interest to also be able to invest in credit, but we just need to sort that one out. So that's the only one issue on the listed side. On the unlisted side, which has been obviously a subject of one of the key subjects of the commission. Yeah, I think the acting CEO has already clarified that we had an issue with the mandate design. We now have a new mandate that was signed, but we are currently making sure that we are crossing the T's and dotting the I's in terms of execution and implementation. So we'll have the workshop with the clients to make sure that we all understand what is expected from us as the PIC, as the asset manager, and what the clients are expect from us. So that, I'd say, the mandate design, mandate implementation, is complete, but you know, it's just making sure that the understanding of expectations it's aligned as to what we need. We also are in progress, but I think in terms of improving our systems, so the eFront is a system where anyone who wants to get money from the PIC, has an idea that he thinks or she thinks needs to be funded, can come through via the website portal, and that website portal is the eFront system. The Quest system is a new system that the acting CEO, as also being our chief technology officer, they've introduced into the middle office and the back office to allow fund principals to monitor their investments. So that one, the system is ready. So we are still testing it. We still need to open it up for GEPF, but it's there. This will allow us to monitor investments in a safer live environment. The operating model constraints, I think we are nearly done in terms of the delegations of authority. This is really just a EXCO and a board matter. So I wouldn't say this is a huge challenge. It's something that we are nearly complete with it. With regards to deal origination and assessment, I think maybe what's missing there is that these issues of deal origination and assessment, we have made it clear as to who is responsible for what within the team. So just so that you don't have people stepping on each other's toes, but we've made it clear that for funds going forward, the fund principals must lead, obviously supported by the research, legal, PMV, and ESG. So that's how we want to create a seamless and a working operating environment for the deal side. This will obviously assist us in making sure that deals are executed properly. But the other key thing is that you want your support, say risk or ESG or legal, to play a big part in also not just in origination, in managing the funds, and in extracting value. currently they were only focused on not origination, but just the management and maybe how we exit. So it's now we've made the process a lot more seamless, and we think it will also excite the team and the individuals who work here. I think this is actually what the team also wanted. So this is quite good for us. In terms of focus, we've just clarified as to, for every fund that we have within the unlisted side, what is a typical investment size that we need to be focusing on. So maybe just to give the members of Parliament a headline to say, you spend the same amount of time and energy looking at a 1 billion rand deal to looking at a 1 million rand deal. And obviously we don't have a endless resources in terms of in terms of people. So we'd like to just make sure that we focus on the deal sizes that will move the needle, that will make a difference for our clients. And for the smaller transactions, we also have a solution for them, which we believe it's a quite neater solution where we can use aggregators to assist us with those things. And the other thing is that if you look at PIC, just from I think I come from more the private side of asset management for the last 18, 19 years. And PIC has always been viewed as this asset manager who is there and the rest of the market was on the other side. So we just need to make sure that as the PIC, we continue to work with our colleagues in the industry. We foster partnerships where we can, because we believe through partnerships we can have better deals. It's a lot easier to partner with someone on deals where you have other high quality, maybe private partners in it. So that's quite important. It also protects the individuals within PIC, it protects the board, but it also provides clarity on the type of deals that we are making as an investment house. Just on the party commission, I think those ones are in progress. I think the chair of the board will update you, or the acting CEO. And I've spoken about the South African economy as to what the issues are there. And just in terms of SOEs, your DNLs, your SAAs, your AXA, I mean, just to give a highlight that as a principal, we know that we have a responsibility to assist the economic growth. And as such, not that we are going to throw good money after bad, but where we have well-functioning state-owned entities that we believe are catalysts for economic growth, those entities from my side and the team, we believe that they should be assisted, obviously assisted on a commercial basis. So I think that's where I'd like to sort of leave it. Other one on governance structures, I would say that's more internal. We are currently, obviously with the changes of the new mandate, we are sort of restructuring the governance layers within the team. So, but that's more, I would say, internal and at a board level. But it's ongoing and it's in progress. We should conclude in the next 3 weeks or so. I think that's it from me, Chair.
Chair and members, thank you. That is the update that we had prepared for the committee, and I will hand over to my chairperson just to wrap it all up before we open up for questions. Thank you.
Chair, so thanks very much. I think let me leave it here at this stage, and we're ready to take questions, comments, guidance from the honorable members. So let me hand over to you, Chair. That's all from us for now. We will take questions and comments.
Thank you very much. Okay, over then to members whose hands are up. I see Dennis. Anybody else for now? Okay, while members are gathering their thoughts, can we go ahead, Dennis?
Yeah, thanks very much, Chairperson. Good morning to you and the colleagues. And good morning to the Deputy Minister and the people from the PRC. Deputy Minister, I want to start by just appreciating your attendance today. I think if ever there was a need for leadership, it is today. And I think the fact that you have attended to support the acting people in the PRC is appreciated. So thank you. Right. So let's start off with the questions. The uncomfortable one, of course. We've had 2 high-level resignations and the suspension of the Chief Operating Officer, Mr. Hako. And there has not been a reason given for the suspension. Now, I think that during the presentation, there was a good explanation of the importance of the role and the magnitude of the role that the PRC plays. Government employees' pensions are closely tied to it, as well as the UIF and compensation fund, etc. So, you know, this has a massive impact across the board. And I think that we certainly need to know a little bit more about the circumstances around the suspension of the Chief Operating Officer, because obviously it comes at a difficult time as well. And I do want to comment the first slide that spoke about challenges, which laid out the macroeconomic situation that we find ourselves in. I believe that particular slide should be circulated to all politicians and all staff members within government, so that they could realize a little bit of the urgency that our economic environment has placed us in at the moment. So, yeah, that's the first and probably the most important question, please. Then, just in terms of the investment strategies, I'd just like to hear a little bit more. So yeah, okay. So there's under challenges, the second slide of challenges, there was a comment about mandate design and the fact that the mandate had been changed, re-engineered. And I'd like you to explore that a little bit more and tell us, you know, what was the previous mandate? You've given us some clues, but you haven't spelt it out for us. And I think I'd like it to be spelt out, what the transition is between the old mandate and the new mandate, or not necessarily new, but tweaked, whatever you want to call it. But I'm just want to go back to your slide. Taking it off my screen, sorry. Yeah, no, it's off my screen. So yeah, I mean, there was a comment on the second slide of challenges that the mandate has been amended. Please tell us that. And then also, you know, what process was followed for amending that mandate? Is it just something that a decision that gets made at a higher level? Was there any public participation or participation around the people that you mentioned as your clients? So the employees pension fund, etc. Was there any sort of consultation, or is it just a change taken as a decision by a small group of people? So yeah, and that obviously would inform the investment strategies. And I'd like to hear, and this would be for the Chief Investment Officer, specifically not from the Deputy Minister, but have you had any pressure to make specific investments? And of course, here I'm looking specifically at SOEs. Have you had any pressure from government? If so, from whom, and in what forum, in terms of getting pressure to invest in any specific SOEs? And obviously emanating from that is two or three very specific questions. So number one is, what is your exposure to Eskom in terms of your investment at the moment? I know that there was at one stage quite a substantial exposure that was detailed, I think, in the last presentation we had. And if you can just give us an idea of the level of exposure to Eskom. The second one is, you know, what other SOEs have you been investing in? An example, of course, Denel would probably be the one that springs to mind, but any others that you'd like to mention? And then the big question. So Takatso is the entity that has bought a share of SAA. And I do know that the PRC has a relationship with them, but what, you know, how deep is that? How close is that relationship? Does the PRC own part of Takatso? If so, how much? And has that amount changed during the unrolling and the unfolding of the SIA transactions? Yeah, and then of course, Daybreak Farms. I know there's some big changes that have happened at Daybreak. Obviously, again, there's been some issues that have led to those changes. If you can just tell us what steps have, what the exposure is to Daybreak, and what steps have been put in place to correct the issues that are happening at Daybreak. Chair, those are some fairly weighty questions. I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you. I see Mr. Maletsane, Mr. Jutoy.
Thank you, Chairperson. Let me first start by acknowledging the presentation. I just want to check with the presenters there on the issue of the Mpati Commission. There is a matter there of a Karen beef, whereby they initially requested the assistance of 4.5 billion. And then it was inflated to 6 billion. Ultimately, they settled for 5.2 billion, which was the one that was approved. But due to the resignation of the board, the matter had to be stopped and referred back. I just want to check with them whether the matter is still standing or it was approved at a later stage, or since it has been stopped up to now. Secondly, on the presentation on page 33, whereby they are talking about their challenges, they spoke about the implementation that of the Mpati Commission, that it is in progress. I just want to check with them. When are they expecting to complete the implementation of the Mpati Commission? Thank you, Chairperson.
Okay, next. That's Jutoy Fani.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the presentation. Chair, I've been partially covered. I want to know, with regard to the transformation mandate that was obviously and is obviously high on your priority list. You make investments, you look at the BE status and the BE rating that guides your decisions. Now, the risk that I see is that the transformation mandate may or does influence your decision that you make at the end of the day. And you mentioned that you are preferably doing business with companies with a high BE rating. My question is, how big is the pool that you are fishing in at this stage? And do you get optimal return on investments by focusing only on race when you make your decisions? This is actually absurd that we are in a dispensation and in a situation in the country where the whole approach is race-based instead of going into a free economy. But that's a statement, Chair, and you're going to call me to order now. So let's see what the answer is. Thank you.
No, I can't call you to order. You have a right to ask the question, although the formulation, in my view, is limited, but I'll respond later. I mean, I can't stop you. On what grounds will I stop you from asking your question? I don't have any authority, nor do I want it. We're a multi-party democracy. You're an elected member of parliament, so I don't know what you're about, funny. But I'll give you my views at the end of for what they were, at the end of the process, needless to say. So on the Mpati Commission, I'm surprised, DM, and...
Chairperson.
Yes?
You can't see my hand.
Oh, yes. Well, I didn't, and Nkululeko couldn't do it. What do you mean I can't see you? And why are you being so aggressive, Zolani? What's wrong, my brother? Have I ever stopped you from speaking? Okay, Zolani, go ahead. What's wrong with you?
No.
I'm 66, may I remind you? Plus, I got 4 eyes here, and then I can't, right, here we are. Okay, what do you want to say? Who stopped you from ever speaking?
Chairperson, the Lula moment can even come when you are 70. So it's not a problem.
Okay, my friend. Okay. Right, go ahead.
Good morning, Chair, and good morning to the members. Chair, I want to also add my voice in terms of welcoming the presentation and really thank the Chair of the PIC for being here. You will recall, Chair, that in the financial year 2020-2021, I made mention of the fact that the communities under the jurisdiction of the institution of traditional leadership in the country, which is land basically that is communal and land that doesn't necessarily have title deeds. We look up to institutions like the PIC when it comes to financing of projects which are going to see us having what we refer to as the smart villages at the end of the day to transform the plight of our people in those spaces from being areas of consuming, but to areas wherein we can take active participation in the mainstream economy. You will realize, Chair, that many of the mining operations are also happening in these areas. And but the mining magnates themselves are people who come from elsewhere, but to come and exploit these mineral deposits in our areas. So in some instances, communities have gone to the extent of making application for licensing in order to get the permit so that they can do the mining themselves. But the problem has always been the access to finance. We do have the mineral wealth in our areas, but access to finance is a big, big problem. And we do not have collateral, given the fact that the only system of tenure that is there is based on the PTO, as it were. Now, I want to say to the DM who chairs the PIC, together with the team that is accompanying him, could they not have a special dispensation with regards to the communal areas of the country? Because the instrument itself systematically excludes us, people coming from these areas, from accessing the very same fund, which we make contribution, by the way, because we sell our labor, but our homes are based in our ancestral areas. And what we want to see changing is that as we sell our sweat and blood in the marketplace, we would also like to tap into the PIC resources, simply because we think we have a right to tap into them. And we think that they have to change their approach in terms of looking at us. They must deal with us in the manner in which that is specific, which is based on objective factors of where we come from. And this is an appeal that I'm making to the PIC, which really does good work, not only in the country, but in the entire continent. But as we say, we would like really to access these resources by way of a special dispensation being looked at or being considered by the PIC so that we can access this. I happen to sit as part and parcel of the leadership collective of Contralesa, and we sit with volumes and volumes of communication of people trying to come to us to say how best can we assist them for funding. And these projects are very good projects which are viable and which are bankable when we look at them. But I think there is nothing that we can do because our hands are tied, and therefore our last hope is really with an institution like the PIC. And I'm sure the DM is also a son of the soil who is born in a rural community. He will understand what I'm talking about. And sometimes these issues, we simply look over them, not by commission, maybe by omission. And I'm therefore saying I'm putting this matter on the table because it is really leaving the rural communities outside the scope of realizing economic transformation. And we are still referred to in this day and age as dead economies. And unless we access those resources, we will only make our economy lively when we access the resources at the PIC level. Thank you very much, Chair.
Okay, thank you. So very quickly on the Party Commission, DM and PIC, I'm surprised at how far you've got. You say that you've implemented 80 something of it, or a substantial percentage of it, and the esteemed judge is overseeing that, so we take it, it's accurate. But there's the other leg, of course, which is the legislation that comes from National Treasury, and of course the DM in your role as the Deputy Minister. That is a matter that keeps coming up in the committees in Parliament on both sides, NA and COP, and hopefully that will come reasonably soon. Dear, there are some like fifth Parliament term issues that get carried over. Now, there is a sense that people have in the public and NGOs and commentators that, and we brought this upon ourselves as the majority party, that we as committees, we are lame duck, we don't carry out our oversight, and we're too servile to the executive. Elements of all of that are certainly true in my view. And it's the view also of senior people in the ANC, including in the NEC, as you know, DM. So those things are true, but it's exaggerated, I think. Now, for example, on the PIC, which is why I'm very cautious. I can't speak for Dike Lady, she was there then. But, we had wonderful financials. And we had what seemed to us an excellent CEO and a very good board. And we were swayed by that. And, what started creeping in, and I must say, committee colleagues, it was a DA that began to raise some issues, but in such an adversarial manner and by people who, well, let's not go there, but, it was like difficult to get the majority in the ANC to consider sufficiently what one or two of the, one particular member of the opposition was saying. But we also began to pick up the corridors, as it were, of Parliament and elsewhere in the excuse me, structures we serve in outside Parliament and, at the airports and so on. They're not always well at the PIC. So our committee had various sittings, and each time we were flabbergasted by the financials. I mean, they were leaps ahead of anybody else who managed assets. And the unions had their complaints, but they were not focusing, or they didn't know, or we don't know. But unfortunately for us as a committee, we didn't have, and nor do we now, the capacity or resources to actually know what was really going on. And even now, with the Party Commission having done an excellent piece of work, as it were, we still don't know fully what happened. So, I personally, having been around for thousands of years now, have become very cautious of presentations. And so it is, I shall return. The same happened with some other entities, but the PIC took us really by surprise for the internal mismanagement that has happened. So I'm glad, Dennis, that you raised the issue, because I'm a bit surprised, DM and others, that you mentioned the suspensions. Where do you really think nobody would ask about it? So we wait to hear what this is about. I'll skip my observations in that regard. I think in some or other measure, others have raised it. Also to mention, it's very interesting, but I think members might know we processed a private member's bill, which Treasury at the time vigorously opposed. And we went ahead and did it with the support also of an excellent chief on our side, Jackson and Tembu. Sadly, he's passed on. And we stood our ground, and finally it's come to be that union representation does occur on the board. And the skies haven't fallen down. And the DM is chairing the PIC board and the very party. Dennis, I can't help thinking at you, Dennis. What else is a chairperson supposed to do? And where's the advantage of the last say, Dennis? It's interesting you welcome the DM to this meeting. I mean, he's the chair of the board, after all. He has to be here, or his deputy. But, you guys really oppose this thing vigorously, these two things. Now, union members, no. The DM chairing the board, no. So even slid it, all right, if the DM of finance is for some other reason in a previous life conflicted, could be the DM of any other, excuse me, economic cluster minister. But anyway, I'm glad to see the skies haven't fallen down on DM and that you are welcomed even by the party that opposed you. Dennis, Dennis, no, that does address the issue, your comment in the chat group. Okay, so on the PIC and ESCOM, obviously it's a major issue. Dennis has raised it, but there was some sort of suggestion that, they might even buy off part of the shared, the debt that ESCOM's got. But that seems to have fallen away after it seemed at some stage, at least COSATU, excuse me, at least COSATU at some stage seemed to consider it. I don't know where that process is, but because it's been in the public domain, I know there are union members might be restless about it. And there are other unions, members might support it because it might protect jobs and, and so on, and it might help the economy to grow and so on. There are challenges within the workers. And of course, it's their funds, to point out once against members, not the MP's funds, interestingly, that are at stake here. So let's not get on a moral high horse until we ourselves are prepared to put our money where our mouth is, so to speak, in this case, literally. So I'll pass for now, except to say that we hear you on the unlisted side. There are many things you're planning to do, and we know you have to be cautious, and we know there are a set of what you call trade-offs and balances you have to secure. But, it's difficult. Frankly, I can only speak subjectively for myself. Maybe I'm the only one. I can't make much of what you're saying. In other words, I don't have the skills, technical skills, or the knowledge or information personally to be able to assess what it all means. It seems like it's hanging in the air, so to speak. We've had these sort of submissions before. You're just speaking more confidently as a PIC and more assertively than your predecessors did. But I can't really say whether there's progress or not. I'm not saying there's no progress. I'm not saying there's progress. I don't know. I don't know what criteria to use, dear. I mean, you're more skilled at these things than I am, certainly, and others of you are here. I can't make sense of it, but I'm just saying these things because, as a chair, I feel really bad, actually, how we were, there's no such thing as civility. Well, not from somebody like me. I'm 66, for God's sake, well, for whatever's sake. I mean, what am I going to be servile to the executive for? I really didn't know until it all came out. So I don't trust myself anymore, Jim, if you understand what I mean as a chair. We hear all the stuff, and then you get battered as a chair because, you were there, my daughter also, not least, and how you let it pass. And I honestly didn't know. I can tell you now also, it's not confession time. People attack us, but the truth is, even with SARS, us Dikeledi, we battled and battled. There was nothing concrete we had, actually. There were suspicions and political instinct. No chair, no committee can go by that. We weren't convinced, but we had no evidence. Similarly with PIC. So, Jim, I'm very happy you're at the helm. I know you for thousands of years also, which is not to say you are 1,000-year-old, but I know you for a very long time. And I really feel more confident that you now, and you're the next generation. So, there's more at stake here at an existential, personal, political level for you than for oldies like me. All I'm saying is, Liam, we were very disappointed. I can tell you, let me speak for myself. I can't speak for Dick Lady, she should speak for herself. So I was really disappointed to see how little we really knew of what was going on in this body that filled us with pride at one stage. It really filled us. It was managing things so well. I mean, globally, your colleagues there, PIC management, used to come and present those wonderful slides, and the references at the bottom seemed very impressive. They weren't lying to us. It was there. All these international agencies were ranking us against the established democracies. We were so impressed with the PIC. We weren't impressed with its failure to transform, but we were impressed with the way it was managing its financials. So all I'm saying is, I am very cautious. Overall, it seems so summarize, I'll put it like this. Overall, I think there's significant progress since, the Imparti Commission concluded its report. I'll say that. Exactly how much of progress, how durable it is difficult to say. How much we don't know. And I'm not saying anybody is deliberately on your side, dear. There's no reflection on your integrity or anybody's integrity. And the poor CIO is not even a month old. He's a baby, so to speak, with due respect to him in the PIC. So I'm not saying anybody's misleading us. It's just that we don't know, we don't have the capacity as Parliament to do like penetrating internal research to check things out. But for now, it's looking good. Let's see how durable it is, and let's see what you'll finally, the outcome is what we have to see. The results is what we have to see. So thank you for your input. And members, if we have time, and remember the PIC is our primary occupation, I meant to raise it in Kuleko, and I only noticed this morning it wasn't there. The minutes are meant to be treated. So if we have time, we should go through minutes. Otherwise, if there's no time, next time when we meet. Okay, over to you. Is anybody else now? Before somebody screams at me about their hand not being up, nobody's being suppressed. There's no law that allows me or rule to suppress anybody. Anybody wants to say anything? If the staff want to say anything, does the the content advisor or the researcher want to say anything or put something in the chat group? If you're feeling shy, I can raise that. Okay, I don't see any hands up. Over then to you, DM and your team.
Thanks, Chair. I'll ask the acting CEO to start, and then she'll also allocate respective members of the executive specific questions that have been asked, and then I'll come at the end. Over to you.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Chair of the committee. So let me start with the resignations that we've had and the suspension of Mr. Hako. So we have had 2 resignations, one for Lusanda, who is the acting and CIO for unlisted portfolio. And there is also Shoto Deolamo, who has been for the past 2 years the face of investment for the PIC. And both of them are resigning subsequent to the CIO being onboarded to our team. And I think based on what the CIO was saying as well, just what we're working at now, the streamlining of processes, making sure that investments are handled properly. Their departure, whilst it is a career progression on their side, and it is a sad loss to the PIC, I think it has been fully mitigated in terms of the new approach that you are taking and the kind of interventions that he spoke to earlier on. And I think for the amount of time they've spent at PIC, I suppose it is kind of time for them to go on. But Chair, I think we have looked at it very carefully, and we've looked at the subsequent people who are coming below them, and we still fully mitigated in terms of the void that they might leave in the organization. They are actually serving their notice periods this month, and the process is more about proper handover and making sure that their exit is fully insulated from negatively impacting PIC. So that is just in terms of the 2 resignations, which I said are quite unfortunate for PIC, but we have accepted, and I think we have put in measures just to make sure that we still continue with the operations as effectively as we should. Now, on the suspension, Chair, PIC has instituted numerous investigations. And perhaps let me start by saying the suspension is precautionary. So there is no fault found with Mr. Hako. He hasn't been found guilty of anything. The purpose for that suspension was, one, just to make sure that there's credibility to the process. He's a very senior employee of the PIC. And if there are some allegations that have been laid, you would want, that process of investigating to have the necessary credibility. So that is why we gave him sort of a garden leave, let's say precautionary suspension that we've made. And currently the CRO, who also joined the PIC last year, is acting in his position. And that has been fully insulated in terms of making sure that the operations continue. So it was more really to make sure that there's credibility to the process of investigation, there's agility in terms of concluding those investigations, which are quite advanced now, but also just to accelerate the process and make sure that it is complete. So Chair, just in terms of that, I think that was the reason. And are we exposed? We are not, Chair. I think we have taken careful measures just to make sure that all hands are still on deck and the business of the PIC can still continue. Chair, I would like to then ask the CIO just to deal with the mandate questions and the investment questions that have come through. And we have a full team that will deal with most of those issues who are with us here. CIO, can I hand over to you then just to start with the mandate, or anywhere where you'd like to start?
Okay, thanks, Acting CEO. Just maybe as a high level to members of the committee, we are going to address the investment strategies relating to the unlisted side. So just remember that on the listed side, about 80% of the portfolio is passively managed. We have money that we manage internally, which will be part of the 20%. And also we have money that we allocate to external fund managers, like your let's say your Mazi, your Mergents, and other and asset managers. So if you think of the PIC investment strategy, we follow a core satellite approach. Core relates to the fact that we passively manage quite a big book, 75 to 80%, and the 20% is actively managed by ourselves, but by also allocating money to external managers. So that's one on the listed side. When we come to the unlisted side, which would talk more to the slide that you have seen, I mean, what has been the key changes in the mandate design? At the top level, in the past, prior to the new mandate, we had one overarching private equity or unlisted mandate, and that size was about 70 billion. So within that particular mandate provided to us by the GEPF and also UIF, we had to obviously invest across different sectors of the economy. So that's one. So we moved from one overarching fund, which was 70 billion, to the new structure where we have actually segmented the funds into different pots. So in terms of that segmentation, we have a pot that's dedicated to fund of funds. Fund of funds or intermediaries mean that we get allocated capital from the GEPF. That capital, we then find good asset managers, private equity managers, listed, unlisted debt managers, MES or hybrid managers that we allocate money to, and they go out and look for opportunities within the SAE economy and also the rest of Africa. So that's one fund. The other fund is just dedicated to private equity and debt investment within the South African region. That fund is say about 4 billion. And we also have a specific fund focused on investment ex-South Africa. So part of this mandate, you can have say about more than 50% of the investment or the revenue has to come outside of SA. And that fund, it's about 8 billion. So in that fund, we need to go and find opportunities or businesses that we believe we can invest and ultimately extract some value over the next 5-10 years in using that particular fund. And we also have another fund which focuses largely more on the agri side, which has about 7 billion. So all these funds have different sectors of the economy where they need to focus on. So I'd say as a high level, we've moved from one fund that covered everything to literally, let's say, 4 funds that are segmented per sector. They are specific for a particular region or regions, and they have a key focus on what they need to do. And those funds will have fund principals managing them with their teams. Obviously, those fund principals will report to their head, and their head will report to me. So that's the key change from old versus new. I don't want to get into the other stuff on the fees. I mean, that might be a bit too much detail, but that's the high level changes. In terms of was there any process followed? I think it was Mr. Ryder who asked. Yes, there was a process that was followed. That process took quite a while. I think it must have been 12 to 18 months. So that process involved the PIC team with the GPF or the client's team, and it took about 12 to 18 months to negotiate and to make sure that we have a mandate that made sense from the point of us PIC being able to achieve what is expected from us, but also from the client themselves, making sure that in terms of what they want from their portfolio they can receive from our end. So there was quite an intense consultation process followed, involving all the parties. So maybe that's that. And another question that was raised was that, have I had any pressure as CIO to invest in any SOEs? I can say that in the last 4 or 5 weeks that I've been here, there has not been any pressure from anyone in the team or the board to invest in SOEs. I think the mandate that I was provided was that Kabelo, come, join the team, make sure that you focus on delivering what the client expects, which is one, obviously optimizing financial returns, but also while taking into account the societal issues that we deal with. And so if you think of our objective function at PIC, it's really to maximize financial returns while minimizing societal bad societal outcomes. So we want to maximize good societal outcomes and also maximize financial returns. So that's sort of the function that we are trying to solve in all the investments that we do. In terms of the ESCOM exposure, so the ESCOM exposure, remember, we only have debt exposure, fixed income exposure into ESCOM, and that number is now in the region of about 125 billion. So that's the total PIC exposure to ESCOM. The numbers might be slightly off, but as it stands today, it's about 125 billion of ESCOM bonds that the PIC hold. And what other SOEs have you been investing? I mean, we've invested in almost all other SOEs, but these investments obviously predates me, but those investments are in Land Bank, in Transnet, and most of them, remember, they are fixed income investments. So they either have an implicit and explicit guarantee by the National Treasury, or they have an implicit guarantee by the National Treasury. With regards to Takatso, does PIC own Takatso? How much, and has it changed? So PIC owns 30% stake in Harith Group Partners. So the entity that's going to invest in Takatso, it's Harith Group Partners. So PIC itself, we will have an indirect exposure to Takatso via Harith Group Partners. So if you think about it, I think, I'm not sure whether this is in the public domain, but maybe let me not spell out the ownerships, but we own 30%. Whatever Takatso is going to be in the final structure, PIC will have an indirect exposure of 30% of that entity. So that's how it's currently structured. On Daybreak, I think here I may need the team to also assist me, because it's a matter that was actually tabled at IC and also at the Directors Affairs Committee. So what we have done on Daybreak, I'm not sure whether the communication is out yet, Kongani, but we have sought to Chair, can I disclose?
Yeah, well, it's a committee.
Okay.
I can take that one on the,
maybe
if you want, yeah. It's, so Chair, it's, and I'm not sure what Kabelo was hesitant. This is we're transparent, we need to put things out there.
Yeah.
Chair, so the Daybreak did not have we've just recently recommended the appointment of a new board, and there are internal processes that the legal team, they are undertaking to make sure that everything is done according to the law. So there is a process, and the main aim is to make sure that the board that is installed, it's aimed at making sure that we restore governance and we ensure that that company performs optimally insofar as the returns are concerned. But unless there are specific questions, we can get into that. And some of the questions, if we're not able to answer that here, we can follow them. I mean, we can answer those questions in writing. But on so far as the Daybreak, particularly on the governance side, because we're not involved ourselves as a PIC in the operations of the Daybreak, there is a board that we're trying to put in place. And unless there's specific questions that may even require answers from the outgoing board, we can come back to honorable members with specific answers in that regard. But insofar as the board is concerned, the board, the committee of the board has taken a decision that we need to put together a board that will restore governance. And like I said, unless the specific questions and issues that are taking place within operation or within that investee companies or the PIC, will be willing to come back with specific answers in that regard. But over to you, Kevin.
Thank you, Chair. Maybe just members of the committee, just as a correction on ESCOM, the ESCOM exposure is 86 billion, but total SOE exposure is about 125 billion, just as for clarity. So maybe with regards to the current beef, I think there it's more a legal, I think it has become a legal matter. As the PIC, we don't have any exposure, but we understand there's litigation or a legal matter being that's going on there on the current beef. But I think for the committee, you can rest assured that as the PIC, we have zero exposure in that particular proposed investment. So maybe the other one which was raised, the other one which was raised was just on the party commission, and maybe the acting CEO can take that one.
Yes, thank you, Chair. So on the party commission, it had several aspects. So some of the aspects were for PIC to resolve, and some of the issues were for the other parties to resolve, those that we work with, like for example, the department or perhaps our clients and so on. Now, as management, in terms of what PIC itself was supposed to resolve, we have completed what we needed to implement. We are just waiting for the audit to finalize that. Although the advisory panel, what they call the AP, they have actually gone through the report and they are still to present to our board. But where we are as management, we give ourselves 100% in terms of the implementation that was required. And the residual of the work is with the partners when it comes to the party commission. I hope, Chair, I'm answering and creating clarity in terms of that party commission. The next question, I think it was more on whether there can be a special dispensation here, which I think I will hand over to, I don't know whether the Chair would like to take that or whether he's like to take that
on the transformation.
Yeah.
Maybe just on the transformation mandate, I think just to highlight to members that the objective of the PIC is to be, as an asset manager, we need to maximize financial returns or make sure that we provide or we maximize returns based on a suitable risk. And those risks can be, they emanate from different things. So I'd like to just highlight that we want to provide our investors with superior risk-adjusted returns. And where those returns come from it may not necessarily, we will never exclude others and over others. So what we do that on the listed side, it's pretty easy. On the fixed income side, you really have fixed income bonds you need to invest in. In that manner, it's listed. We buy bonds based on the potential upside and the risk that we see. On the equity side, it's really the JSE gives you a menu of shares that you want to go overweight or underweight, and we have fundamental analysis that the team would do to go overweight or underweight those particular shares, bearing in mind that 80% we would hold it anyway passively. On the unlisted side, we obviously have to be very careful here because we need to make sure that whatever we do, it's in line with our client mandates. So in areas, obviously the client mandate is not to say you have a transformation mandate, here's 25 billion. So the client mandate would stipulate that make sure that you provide superior risk-adjusted returns for the members of our pension fund. And that's what we focus on. But like I said, that we also have a secondary objective when we're making investments. So if you can get an asset that provides a good financial return, but has good societal benefits. So the societal benefits, that's where the transformation angle will come in. So if you have two investments showing the same exact financial returns or prospects, your preference should be the one that maximizes the societal benefits. And that's where the transformation angle will come in. But we also have a responsibility, and we can't ignore that our country is a little bit imbalanced. So where we can help Black fund managers to grow their businesses by allocating capital to them or making sure that they have sufficient checks and balances, and we create an environment where Black asset managers can thrive, but not just Black asset managers can thrive, but also Black businesses, whether in the township, in town, or in the rural areas, we need to also take that into account. So where we find those opportunities and those ideas are investable, the risk is within our limits, and also the returns make sense, but these issues have to be obviously aligned to the client mandate, then we are happy to support. So maybe just to be clear that we are not, the focus is not just on race. If you look at, we don't make investment purely based on race. We make investment purely on financial returns and on maximizing societal benefits. So maybe just on the land one, I think there was just a plea as to a special dispensation for rural for the rural area and making sure that we assist there. So maybe this one, if you look at the PIC portfolio, we have a direct properties portfolio. So if you go to many of the townships within the country, whether it's Mabupane, you go to Tembisa, you would find that the PIC has exposure to some of those malls. So some are in township areas, but others are emerging obviously in the rural areas as well. So with regards to that portfolio, we are obviously trying our best to make sure that we continue to modernize, to assist in modernizing the rural areas. We continue in assisting the township economies, whether it's on direct properties, but if we find that there's an opportunity to assist someone who operates, I don't know, not at Teguini, let's say, in Richards Bay, in a township that makes, or in a rural area, where the opportunity makes sense, we think that it is our duty to support them. So currently we don't have a special dispensation fund for that covers everything, but it's something that we may have to consider. But remember, the money comes from UIF, GEPF, and the compensation fund. So we will need to engage with the client to see if there is appetite. But as a team, I can disclose that we do have a bias to especially in properties, to make sure that we uplift the township and the rural economies by funding property investments.
Yes.
Thank you.
So, thanks, Chair. I think our approach to transformation, it's and that will come back to the 2 points that have been raised by Honorable Kiva and Honorable Ogap, that our philosophy insofar as transformation is concerned, it's not just race. And I'll come back to the point about, and I think the CIO has hinted or touched on some of the issues around race. It's also around the transformation of the industrial structure that we have, that it's important that the industrial structure that we've inherited from the past is still reflect, if you like, the colonial patterns, in the sense that the manufacturing base of our country is very, very low compared to many of the developed and developing countries. So as we look at transformation, we are also looking at how best can we transform the economic structure of our country, because if you look at our GDP composition, it's still dominated by the primary commodities. The recent commodity boom, which was okay for us insofar as the tax revenue are concerned, was great, but you also want to make sure that our economy doesn't largely rely on the export of the commodities, because if the demand for those commodities in the global market goes down, we are going to be in trouble. And that's part of the reason why you have also seen some challenges in Zambia. As an example, when the copper price went down, the economy was in big problem. So insofar as the transformation is concerned, it's not just around race, it's also around the industrial structure, but also the spatial transformation. Because I think Honorable Kiva is correct that we do need to change the spatial distortions of our economy, not only in rural areas, but also in cities. Workers spend almost 40% of their income, of their wages, on transport, moving from townships to their workplaces. And if we have to think about transforming our economy, our society, we've got to take seriously the question of the spatial nature of our economy that needs, or society that needs to be seriously transformed. Now, insofar as race is concerned, I think the CIO has put it very well that we're not only focusing on race, but it's important that the imbalances of the past need to be addressed. And as we do so, any BE transaction must make commercial sense. And that has been the approach of the PIC. And I think we should not imply or insinuate that only BE deals go bad, because that's not the case. There are other deals that have gone wrong, which have nothing to do with BE, because sometimes I get a subtext in this message is that no, anything BE is bad. And I don't think that's what Mr. Ogam is saying, but if he's saying so, I would like to contest that view.
Mr. Jutoi, DM, it's funny, Jutoi.
Oh, sorry, I'm sorry, Mr. Ogam, I'm very sorry. I take it back, Mr. Honorable Jutoi. If that's what you're saying, I would like us to have a comprehensive debate on this thing. And I think, Chair, it would be important just as a country to debate this issue around BE, because it comes in different forms. And the question for me is, given the racial inequalities that we still have in our society, gender inequalities that we still have in our society, the class inequalities that we have in our society, let us be open around the strategies that we need to deploy to deal with these inequalities. Because from our side, we do think that targeting race, targeting gender, targeting class, and the state taking measures to correct these imbalances, it's necessary and it's a constitutional imperative, which is clearly articulated in our constitution, that we do need to take, the state has to take measures to address the inequalities of the past. And let us be honest, there are people who believe that no, the state should not get involved in the redistribution of resources. The market will solve these problems. Just allow the market to operate, and all these racial inequalities, gender inequalities, class inequalities will be solved through the process of free market, and the market will solve this issue. And this is not to say you don't need the role of the market. You do need the market to play its role, but you also need the role of the state to enable other citizens and individuals in our society to participate, to have opportunities in our society, precisely because the past was constructed through state interventions, state involvement to allocate. It's not by accident that we do have racial inequalities in our society. It was not just the market operating to generate these inequalities. The state got involved. In fact, if you did not have the involvement of the state in the past to distribute resources in the manner in which we did, we probably have had a different outcome. We've had a lot of Black people participating as farmers. And I mean, if you read the book by Colin Bundy, The Rise and the Fall of the Peasantry, it demonstrates how African farmers were participating in farming and how the state itself took measures to deny them the participation in the economy. I can go on and on in how the colonial state basically put us where we are. So I think it would be disingenuous for us to say, no, all these inequalities will get resolved through the markets. And I think, Chair, we do have to have just a comprehensive debate on this issue because it does come out in different ways. So our approach is the PIC, at the risk of repeating myself, we're not only looking at race, we take seriously the idea that there has to be returns, and therefore, as we get into the BE transactions, we prioritize whether these BE transactions will generate returns for the workers as and when they retire. The last point, Chair, which is the rural, and I think we will be having a strategy session as the PIC to look at how we get involved in dealing with all those issues, the racial transformation in all its facets. But I think it's important, and I think the point made by Honorable Kiba, it's an important one. It's an appeal. We should take it very seriously. We should consider it as we discuss these matters in our strategy session. But I also do think that it's important for honorable members to understand that we act on the mandate of our clients, right? So the GEPF has assets of approximately 2 trillion, and it allocates these monies to different assets, both listed and unlisted, equities, fixed income, properties, cash and money market. And the main mandate basically set out the allocation of this different to the different assets. And this is what is called a strategic asset allocation. So the PIC as the asset manager, we're responsible for tactical allocation, but we largely get our mandate from the client. So we'll see how in the context of the appeal that has been made, how in the context of tactical asset allocation, we seek to transform and contribute towards the development of our rural areas. And I think the appeal is well understood and we'll take it very seriously. And the last point that you raised, Chair, you say you're seeing progress and you trust us, and we will not mislead you, will not want to mislead Parliament in any way. And the question is how durable this progress that we're making. aren't we gonna see the reversal of the advances that we're making, the work that we are doing? I think, Chair, this will be contingent. There's no progress and advances that we make that are permanent. These are subject to reversal. And I think this will be contingent upon the integrity of the people that we have within the PIC, starting from the board, the executive management, and everyone in the institution. So that's one thing. The second thing is going to be the policies that the previous board has put in place, which we are also strengthening in different ways. And the third thing is going to be, we have to be held accountable as this PIC, as this company, by Parliament, yourself, but also the civil society, which includes the media, trade unions, because after all, this money belongs to the workers. So they do need to get actively interested in the way in which we use or deploy this money as per the mandate of our clients. And our clients also need to be very active in making sure that we do things accordingly within the law, within the policies that we basically adopted. And I think I cannot emphasize more the role of the civil society, because if it wasn't for the civil society, I do not think that we as South Africa would have been able to roll back what we've termed as state capture. It was as a consequence of the active civil society, us as public representatives, whether in the executive or anywhere else, being held accountable, being asked tough questions about how we are managing the affairs of the public. So I do think that the durability of the work that we are doing will also depend not only within what goes on within the PIC itself, but also what goes on within society to make sure that we are kept accountable to the things that we've got to do. Those are our initial reactions, Chair, to your questions and comments that have come from the honorable members. Thank you very much.
Thank you, DM. Colleagues, unless there's something else, we don't need to drag a meeting on just for the sake of doing so. And I think they've answered fairly competently. And the Deputy Minister rounded things up, I thought, quite well. So unless there are follow-ups, obviously we can call them back if any issues arise. But for now, is there anybody else who wants to take things further? I don't see any hands up. So that means we can draw to a close. So maybe take this opportunity to thank you, DM, and your team, to the acting CEO and the new CIO and others, and wish you well. Okay, members, we've got a whole period here. Why don't we do the minutes? We can excuse you, obviously, we're dealing with internal minutes, unless you're so bored that you want to participate. We certainly don't want to attend your expo minutes processing. Thank you very much. Okay, fine. Although some opposition members might think that's part of our oversight, but fine. Okay, see you. Right, over then, members, look, we've got the minutes. Actually, it's both of our faults, we must say, both Inkululeko and myself. Actually, everything that Inkululeko does wrong, I have to take ultimate responsibility. I did do it wrong. I don't know why. I had this idea the minutes were on the agenda. It's my fault. I didn't look at it properly until this morning. So fine, colleagues, look, we've got the minutes. They've been sent to you. So the 19th of April minutes is the first one, colleagues. Can you open that out? Can you put it on the screen in Kululeko? That's on the FSCA. Hello, my friend, are you there?
Do you see the minutes, Chair, now?
Yeah, there I see them, yeah. So on page 1, any comments, colleagues, friends? Anybody's name spelled wrong? Anybody upset? It should be a small letter instead of a capital letter. Mr. Jutoi, the DU, by the way, is it small or capital? It's difficult. Some people seem to use it as a small D, am I right? But yours is a big...
I think this is preference. I prefer a capital D and a capital T, like it is here.
Yeah, okay, fine, no problemo. Okay, shall we go on? Page 2, page 3. Page 4. Page 5. Okay, mover, seconder, please. Okay, no mover, no seconder.
I'll move, Chair. I'll move.
Okay, fine. I was going to call a meeting tomorrow at 4 o'clock in the morning. Now, please, Dennis, I'm tired of telling them it's not adjourned, it's ended. Okay, let's take a decision now. No meeting is adjourned unless the chairperson says it's adjourned, okay? In Kulileko, Esther, it's not. Adjournment means the meeting isn't finished. We're going to continue it tomorrow. Like in case they hadn't moved and seconded the minutes, then it's adjourned because we're going to continue it tomorrow and pick up from where we left off. But when we meet tomorrow in the evening, because the NA can't meet us earlier, and it's an urgent matter, I'm told, then it's a completely different matter. We're not going to be discussing, for example, the PIC. So it's not an adjournment, it's an ending. I don't know, look, the committee section of Parliament has no authority, no power to rewrite a language or a concept. Whatever language it is, adjournment is wrong. I don't think the committee section has the right. I get told sometimes, no, this is what the managers say. The managers don't have any right to alter a concept. Something ends, it's final for now. And something new begins. It's not, a new beginning is not a beginning of an adjournment. Don't pick up from the previous meeting. If you're talking of adjournment, then we've got a date for another meeting of the PIC. Maybe next half is going to be very busy with legislation and all that. Then, you know, maybe we can say adjournment. So now, can we move a resolution on it? Dennis, I take it you move. Right? I'm tired of telling them there's no such thing as adjourned. Dennis has raised it, right? In this case, at least. Right, is there a second that we can't use adjourned wrongly?
I'll second, Chair.
Fine. So now give that to Mr. Tau and whoever else and the Secretary of Parliament, okay? So that from now on, it's done. So now that's what we're going to do in future. When I say to the committee staff, change things, some things they change and some they don't. And I get really like tired of it, right? So now it's a move and this, now you take it, now in Kulileko, you've got the mandate of the committee, right? If you want, Dennis, because he's got nothing better to do, will write you the difference between adjournment and ending, right? Okay, next thing. Right, Tuesday, 26th April, that is the one on Sastria. Oh yes, this was a very good one, by the way. Okay, page 1. Page 2. Page 3. Dennis has put something on the chat group. Send it to the Secretary of Parliament, Dennis. Page 4. Page 5. This is a very good meeting, I thought. Yes. Okay. That's it. Mover and seconder, please.
I move for the adoption of the minutes, Honorable Chairperson.
Ah, my sister. How are you, my friend? Nice to hear your voice. Right. Seconder. Okay. Seconder.
Yeah, right a second, Chair.
People are so reluctant. Why? Why are they so reluctant? I don't know. Okay, 10th of May was the briefing by Urba. Some of us say Urba. I don't know. I'm not great at pronouncing, even though it's supposed to be my first language. Urba. Okay. 10th of May. Urba. Okay, let's go for Urba. Right, page 1. Right, I'm staring at the attendance. It's very, very stimulating in Kulileko. Page 2. In Kulileko, page to see, poor fellow is so bored. Page 2 in Kulileko, is it frozen? Ah, now we're jumping. Now go back to page 2 so that members can, well, they've looked at it already, presumably. Right, page 2. Page 3, oof, it's going fast. Page 4, page 5. Going on, and there we are. Okay, any changes making? Anyone let's make a change? There's no adjournment, or there is another adjournment. Yeah.
It's not become a heading, Chair, but in spite of that, I'll propose with a much more positive sounding voice in order to please you, sir.
Okay, when you note that he has moved it, just say in brackets in Kalaka with a much more positive sounding note or tone. Okay, who's going to second with a positive? We've got a traditional leader and a poet here who's got a booming voice. Use your rally voice, Solani, if you're still here. All right, Solani seems to have disappeared into the deep rural areas. All right, so who's going to second?
Okamp will second with a very happy voice, Chair.
Put it down into like a very happy voice. Okay, next one. Next one. Okay, so now, colleagues, we're going to the 17th of May. Is that the one? Yeah. Okay, so this one is on the land bank. Very worrying one, this one. I remember it very well. It was very, very worrying. Okay, let's go down. Land and Agricultural Development Bank. Oh, lots of staff and all, you're right, attendance. Okay, let's go. Right, also present, all the people present, many people for us there, but at least it's a Zoom meeting. It's costing a lot of data, but let's see. Okay, carried on down. Right, page 2, any comments there? That's basically the briefing we got in the slide presentation. Page 3, 4, 5, next page 6, down to 7. That's it. Mover and seconder, please. It's the final but last one more to go. Good. Mover and seconder, please.
I move, Chair.
Thank you. Seconder.
Second, Chair.
Thank you, Mamora Khan. And 7th of June, Mamora, the 7th of June, 2022, briefing by Ota SARS and National Treasury. That was recent. Remember last week? It feels like it was a long time ago, eh? It was last week only. Okay. Okay, page 1, page 2, page 3, page 4, page 5, page 6, page 7. Any move and seconder, please?
I move, Chairperson.
Yes, Rada will move.
Thank you, Mamora, and then seconder. So we shall adjourn this meeting till tomorrow. By the way, so you see, I'm behaving like this, right? But actually, so a quick thing, since we've got a good 50 minutes, and nothing in the rules says a chairperson can't use up the remaining 50 minutes. So I won't burden you with 50, just 2 minutes. So you see, there's this little boy. He couldn't get his plurals, his singular and plural right. So he would say, teacher, he's going to play football now. The teacher says, no, you can't say I is. You say, I am going to play football now. So the teacher got very annoyed. Now, those are dark old days. Those, if you remember this, we used to hold you up in school and make you write lines, detain you. Now, if you try to detain the learners, they'll stand up and say, no, we have a union here. You can't keep us in after school. But in those days, my generation, not yours, Dennis, Dick Lady and mine. So we would sit there and write the lines. Well, I didn't write lines, but that was the previous generation. So they asked this boy, they said to him, okay, that's it. The teacher is fed up now. He says, write on the chalkboard, I am going home 1,000 times so you don't forget it. So the boy writes it down dutifully, like on the board in small and I am. So I wrote it down. Oh no, he writes it on a piece of paper, sorry. And he does it. And then, so then he writes on the board. He says, now the teacher, of course, is strolled off to have a cigarette, right? And now the pupil is feeling miserable now. It's getting detained here because he's finished his 1,000 lines on the exam book, page. So then he looks up and he says, I'm going. So he goes to the board and he writes, dear sir, I have finished writing 1,000 times. I am going home. Full stop. Now I is going home. You see? So that's rote learning. That's the background that I came from. Right now, in Kuliliku, can you tell us tomorrow, explain to the committee why we're meeting tomorrow evening? Because you explained everything to me. Can you just explain to the committee, please? Because I know I'm in trouble. I've got to juggle my program around for tomorrow. Right, go ahead. Yes.
Yes, Chair. We got a call from National Treasury, Chair, that there is a sensitive briefing that is time sensitive as well. They would like to brief both committees so that committees can take a decision before they rise.
Right, but why are we sitting for 3 hours?
No, Chair, I anticipate it's not going to be even 3 hours. When I spoke to the PLO of National Treasury, they mentioned that it's going to be a quick thing, probably 45 to an hour. But as you know, when we schedule parliamentary meeting, we schedule them for 3 hours, anticipating an event whereby it drags until 3 hours.
Okay, fine. So it's a joint meeting also, I take it, at that hour. What time is it? It's at the end of are they sitting with the appropriations votes tomorrow?
Yes, I'm told there is house sitting on both sides tomorrow that might end around 5:30. So we're scheduling this meeting for 6 o'clock to be safe.
Yeah, but if it's sitting with votes, remember it's very unpredictable, right? Because I was thinking about it now as I was talking, that actually, when I was on that side, and those of us who were on that side will tell you, it can go till about 10, 11, depends on the number of objections. And sometimes parties don't state they're going to object and so on. So can you check that out? Because rather than put it down standard 5, just say 5 or as soon as a house rises and then send out notices to the NCOP members because we want to know when their house rises. You see? Could you sort that out?
We will get speakers this evening.
Is there any voting tomorrow? Because otherwise we have to persuade members to come. Is there any voting on the decision? I doubt it, right?
We will get the speakers list tonight, Chair. Then we'll
No, my brother, about our joint meeting, right? Is there any voting that has to take place in each committee on the decision that we have to take tomorrow, or is it merely an information briefing?
There is a decision that must be taken, Chairperson, tomorrow.
But is there voting on it? Will you check that out? Because then we need a quorum, you see. And finding a quorum now tomorrow evening ain't going to be easy unless we mobilize beforehand. So will you find that out? Okay, colleagues. So tomorrow, 5 p.m. or as soon as the NA rises. But we are also sitting till late. Mr. Njadu, are you here? Comrade Njadu, are you here? Is Comrade Njadu here? I don't see him here. All right, we need to check that out. Okay, Dennis, what is it you want to say?
Just clarity. So we've got an 8 o'clock meeting. That's appropriations, is it? And then 6 o'clock in the evening.
Yeah, that's 8 o'clock in the morning. Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
Okay, Dennis, the thrashing hasn't helped at all. I can see that. Okay, having said that, thank you all. Bye. The thrashing refers, of course, to the notice making in the school.
Yes, Chairman.
Yeah, thank you, my brother. Listen, can we have Dennis Zolani? You're a traditionalist, sort Dennis out. So I was stressed like he was, and both of us have not changed at all. I think you need to sort him out through traditional means. Discipline him, please. Nobody else can do it, not even his leader, the DA, nor the chair of this committee.
So I bring him here. We can give him a traditional herbalist.
Yeah, exactly. I don't think that will work, but maybe it will. Nothing has so far. Thanks, Zolani. Everybody, bye. Thanks.
Thank you.